after Nordstrom decided to stop selling products from Ivanka Trump's line, several other retailers followed suit, and apparently Donald Trump is not amused by this. Now, before I get to Donald Trump's statements on Twitter about it, let me be clear that all of the retail shops have decided to stop carrying Ivanka Trump's items because sales were lagging. They weren't doing well. This is based on anecdotal evidence, so take it with a grain of salt, but I went on Amazon just to see how her products were doing, and I noticed that a lot of them had like significant price cuts, and they had really bad reviews. Now, I don't think the reviews were because the products were bad. I just think people disagree with Donald Trump and his politics, and it's now influencing consumers against buying Ivanka Trump's products. Now, after these retail shops decided to stop carrying her brand, Donald Trump took his grievances to Twitter and wrote the following: "My daughter Ivanka has been treated so unfairly by Nordstrom. She is a great person, always pushing me to do the right thing. Terrible." Now, there's a scary component to this and also an amusing component to it. The scary component is anyone who disagrees with Trump in any way or does anything to rub him the wrong way will be bullied on social media, will be targeted, and it's ridiculous and crazy. And also, as the President of the United States, you are not supposed to be pushing businesses and doing things that will financially benefit your own family members and the businesses that they were involved in. Now, she says that she's completely, like, out of that business. She's not dealing with it as she's living in D.C. But nonetheless, her name is attached to it. It's Ivanka Trump, right? Yeah. Now, retailers Neiman Marcus, Belk, Jet, and ShopStyle have also announced plans to discontinue sales. Shares in the Seattle-based Nordstrom traded around $42.70 before the tweet, then fell to $42.48 afterward at around 10:50 a.m. I've since checked the market to see how the stock is doing. It's actually doing pretty well. So anyway.
Bounce back.
Yeah, which is good. So I want to get your take on this, guys. What do you think?
Well, the first thing's a positive, right? Like, at least that Donald found time to tweet about something, because after Kellyanne the Conway said on CNN, like, he doesn't tweet about everything. And I'm like, well, what's everything? You mean SNL, Alec Baldwin, Meryl Streep, Super Bowl, climate change hoaxes, not knowing about Putin, negative polls, fake news, voter fraud, New York Times, Nordstrom? Oh, Christian Stewart as well, forgot about that. So it's good to see that he's focusing on the real topics. No, but this is what you mentioned at the start. It's all about selective focus, right? I think he's well aware of the inauguration numbers. I think he's well aware of everything that's going on. I think that in a way, he's just pushing forward an agenda that's simply going to be beneficial to him. And you mentioned it earlier as well. It's like, I think that Nordstrom are making it seem that it's based on sales and it's not political, but as we know, those are very intertwined now. Is that whilst his name is attached to her brand, and I don't necessarily know anything about her brand. I'm a little naive on what her clothing's like, but I think if you were to take her name and put it on a Kurt Geiger shoe or whatever, I'm sure it wouldn't do, that brand would plummet as well. It's just the name that people are picking and choosing between, and it goes along with, that's what's happening now, is that his policies, his negative views on things are trickling down onto everything that's associated with his name, with his family, and it's no surprise that people are going to start to boycott that, and he's going to pick and choose the way he sees that. Like, he would probably tweet out, oh, see their stocks plummeted the way he did with Macy's back in 2013 when he said that because he boycotted Macy's, they suddenly went down, nothing to do with the fact that it was a very warm winter. No one wanted to buy the clothes, but he's going to make it seem the way that he wants it to seem and benefit him.
That's a good point.
I have never, ever missed Kim Kardashian so much. To have to read about Donald Trump on a daily basis continuously. I mean, Kim Kardashian started a book club last week and nobody even knew about it. A book club, guys. She started a book club.
Wow, I missed that.
But what I thought was really
Are they coloring books? That was mean. That was really mean. I'm sorry.
This place. What I thought that was interesting about the tweet is I always pay attention to words, and he says that Ivanka is always pushing him to do the right thing. Why do you have to get pushed to do the right thing, Donald? Like, who are you that your daughter has to push you to do the right thing? I also thought it was interesting when I go to Makani's handle or his bio, it says that all of Donald Trump's tweets are signed DJT, but he can't even keep that up anymore. Like, you notice that the tweets now, it's like he's taken over his Twitter, because I think Justin is supposed to be his social media guy and he's supposed to be tweeting, but you know, he doesn't even sign it DJT anymore because
he can't be controlled, right? And so, you know, of course, there's some speculation with, it's a good hypothesis, I would argue, that Sean Spicer is behind, not Sean Spicer, I apologize, Steve Bannon is behind the scenes, essentially manipulating Donald Trump like a puppet.
Yeah.
But the reality is Donald Trump is someone who doesn't like weakness, doesn't like to be perceived as weak, and certainly doesn't want to be perceived as someone who's manipulated. So I think that as soon as people start pushing that idea out there and it gets to Donald Trump, he'll probably even stop listening to Steve Bannon, which, by the way, in my opinion, is a good thing.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, I think that this is a really interesting development because in a lot of cases, boycotts don't really work, right? And it hasn't worked on the liberal side either. So the boycott of Chick-fil-A, even though some liberals, myself included, stopped eating at Chick-fil-A for some time, sales at Chick-fil-A were actually fine, right? But in this case, I don't even know if it's really the official boycott that was called or if it's because people just get this sick feeling when they see that label, because it doesn't just say Ivanka Trump's name, it says Ivanka Trump made in China. Yeah. And given the type of rhetoric that Donald Trump used against China during his campaigning, it just seems super weird that, those clothes aren't made by American workers, it's made in China. So that happened to me. I saw a dress that I liked, I thought it was really pretty, looked at the label, saw what the label was, and I didn't make a big deal about it, but I was like, I'm not going to try on this dress. Yeah. And I think there are a lot of other women out there who probably feel the same way.
The other thing that that it really just irks me about the first family just continuously trying to make profit off the people, while the average American right now is going through so much with regards to finances, and I'm talking about the entire country. I'm not talking about, you guys love to talk about the Hollywood liberals. I'm talking about people that go to work every single day, that clock in and clock out, have these everyday problems, and then here you have the first family trying to push products and make profit off the people. You have Melania complaining about how her endorsements dropped because of this negative campaign. It's just shameless.
Yeah.
It's shameless.
So I actually do want to touch on Melania Trump a little bit. So Melania Trump, I think rightfully, sued the Daily Mail because they had made it seem as though she was essentially working as an escort at some time, right? And so that's defamation. You can't do that. It's unfounded, and so she sued them. But the interesting thing about the lawsuit is that her own lawyer stated in the filing that she has a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to promote her business, to make money, to sell her fragrances, and this type of defamation will work against her. Yeah. But you know what else works against her in a case like that? Are rules pertaining to conflict of interest. We're not supposed to have the first family promote their businesses and use the White House as a way to profit by these private businesses, right? And so,
it's disgusting.
And to be fair to her, I haven't really heard much from her, and I haven't seen her promote her businesses, other than including something about her line on the White House, website, and then it was later scrapped. But
maybe she's waiting for Michelle Obama to say something.
Maybe.
But the one point I wanted to kind of touch on at the end here was not just his tweet, but the reaction, right, from all his most vocal supporters who claim that we are the social justice warriors, right? They get so uptight and so mad, right? And some of them were celebrating, I wanted to touch on this earlier on a video on Facebook, but I never got to it. It was some of them were celebrating Lady Gaga for not being overly political, but instead just forced their frustration towards the ads and the fact that companies with their own money, and if you know how much it costs to run a Super Bowl ad, it's not cheap, were promoting to be inclusive and promoting a message with their own money. And they get mad about that, and they think that we're pushing forward an agenda with that, and then they get mad at Nordstrom for pushing forward this, and we're the snowflakes. We're the ones that are getting mad about small things, like Dapple and Women's March. We're getting mad about just the things that don't matter, but they're getting mad about a free market. It's in the term, it's a free market. You're supposed to be able to do with what you want with your money.
That's exactly right. And also, in the case of Nordstrom, what are you going to do? And the retailers, are you going to force them to carry a brand that isn't performing well for their business? I mean, it is interesting. And also, in regard to all the uproar over celebrities voicing their opinion, we know what the uproar was in response to Meryl Streep, right? It was crazy. Everyone lost it. But then Matthew McConaughey went on Fox News and said, he's our president. You got to deal with it. It is what it is. Now we got to support him. Something along those lines. I'm paraphrasing, obviously. I don't know. I didn't hear a lot of uproar from the left,
No.
right?
No.
So
I think that's just a direct repercussion from like the Kaepernick effect, right? I think ever since then, people have just been so. I think the people on the right are still so angry about what he did and how much movement he caused in that. So I do a lot of focus on him. So I think that he's the perfect example as to if you're a celebrity and you want to use your voice
100%.
to inspire change. I love to reference him because he doesn't just come out and speak for something that he believed in, but he month by month designates funds to specific areas in Chicago and Milwaukee, but down to the last dollar, down to the last dollar. So that's where I don't get too caught up in the whole celebrity sharing their point of view at the awards with like Meryl Streep. It's great, like you share your message, but I want to see consistency
Action.
and I want to see action as well. I think if you look to Kaepernick as an example, like for instance at the SAG Awards, I don't remember the woman's name. She was in the O.J. Simpson show. But she came up and she said something that was very positive, but she just ended with saying, oh, and by the way, donate to the ACLU. And I was like, that's exactly, like she wanted to push forward a cause. If you're going to come up here and be outraged about the immigration policy and the Muslim ban, then go and donate to a cause that's going to help and push forward that message rather than just being outraged about it. You got to be consistent.
You can't win for losing either when you're in Hollywood. So if you criticize Kim Kardashian and Beyonce for being naked and being vain and not talking about the issues, but then Mark Ruffalo speaks up against the pipeline, and then you condemn him because you're supposed you say, hey, you're supposed to just be vain. We don't want it, and stop telling comedians we don't want to hear politics from you because you've been hearing politics from comedians since the beginning of comedy.
Yeah, that's exactly
so
right.
It's so annoying to hear. I get it all the time. We don't want to hear your politics. Just tell jokes. I'm not a jester. I have a point of view, and I have a right to express it.
It almost seems as though both parties have some special little snowflakes that get their feelings hurt. And so let's all take a moment to realize that and move on.
You know who's going to stop Trump, stop the establishment, stop the corruption? You are. You help us hire new investigative reporters, and we will unleash it on them. tytnetwork.com/go. Let's build the best journalism team in America.